Just like aluminium, iron has a close-packed atomic structure, but the atoms are a bit smaller and a bit closer together, and that means that the forces that hold them together are stronger. The result of that is that iron has a much higher melting point than aluminium. Nigel, this is your raw material, right?
Yes, indeed.
It's covered in rust.
It doesn't matter.
Why not?
Doesn't matter. Just when you stick it in the furnace, it just floats off onto the top, makes a slag, skim it off, throw it away.
You can just scoop it off?
Just scoop it off.
This is scrap iron, yes?
Yes.
And what proportion of iron is there in it?
It's roughly 95% iron.
Oh, so there is a lot of iron, despite all that rust?
Yes.
Now, I've always been confused. Tell me the difference between iron and steel.
Cast iron, basically, is about 3%, 3 to 3.5% carbon. Steel is 10 times less. It's about 0.3% carbon.
10 times less?
10 times less carbon.
So steel is almost pure iron?
It is, yeah.
And iron has got a load of carbon in it?
It has indeed,
That's quite complicated, isn't it?
Very.
Good. So, all right, we now know the difference between iron and steel.
Yep.
Can we go and see what you do in the furnace?
We certainly can.
Let's go and have a look. What about the temperature of the furnace?
We tap it out, the metal out, at 1,500 degrees.
1500.
We use an induction furnace.
You put a huge current through your coil around the outside,
Yes.
and that induces a magnetic field inside your lumps of scrap, and that changes backwards and forwards.
That's right.
And they get a bit warm.
They get hot.
1500 degrees.
Degrees.
So you must use quite a bit of electricity.
We use 600 kilowatts, which is just over half a megawatt.
So a microwave uses about 600 watts. So you're using it 1,000 times. It's like 1,000 microwaves in that.
It is, yeah.
I can imagine it gets quite hot then. Yeah. So you're just pouring it into this bucket, yes?
We're pouring it into this bucket now. This is the ladle. A certain amount of magnesium in there as well, which will flare off and makes that white smoke, which is magnesium oxide.
Oh, yes.
And this is for making ductile iron.
And what's this for?
What this does, it turns the graphite in the cast iron. It's normally like cornflakes. It's like in little plates.
Right.
So when you put the magnesium in, it turns it into little round balls. And that's what makes the iron ductile.
So when you say ductile, it'll pull,
stretches before it snaps.
and it'll bend.
It'll bend. You can forge it. You can do all those things that you can normally do to steel.
So the process is terribly simple. You simply sling the scrap iron in. You've already taken the slag off, yes?
Yes.
And now you melt it and pour it out.
That's it exactly.
And then you have to pour it into these molds.
Then we pour it into these molds here behind us.
Wonderful, isn't it? Just white. I mean, it could be water, except that it's a bit warm.
Yeah, it amazes me how runny it is. I mean, considering it's iron,
Yes.
you'd have thought it would have come out like treacle.
Sticky, but
But
it's
it's runny as water.
very, very mobile, isn't it? Yes, lovely.
It's absolutely incredible. It amazes me every time. I mean, I've been watching it for years and I'm still amazed by it, even now.
Right, terrific. So, Nigel, these are your products.
Yes, they are.
This looks to me like steel.
It's cast iron.
This is cast iron.
It's definitely cast iron.
Right. Why don't you make such a thing out of steel?
Well, the snag with steel is it buckles when it gets very hot. And before you know what's happened, the whole thing's twisted and it's starting to come away from the block. One of the properties of cast iron is that it'll just get hot, it'll grow a little bit because it's got hot, and then it just goes back, but it just sits there nice and stable.
So that's what the carbon is doing for you in the lattice, right?
Yes.
It's preventing it from buckling, from changing shape.
Yes.
So it's I mean, iron is better than steel.
Iron is a different material from steel.
I always assumed, you know, that rusty old things were iron and that smooth, shiny things were steel.
Which is absolutely not true at all.
Right.
There's plenty of rusty steel.